Hello, I'm Maruk Said, your microbiology guide. Let's explore in-depth micro techniques and uncover groundbreaking insight together on this educational journey into the fascinating realms of microbes.
Natural versus artificial selection, explained with Darwin's theory and real-life examples. Table of contents. Natural selection definition. Artificial selection definition. Key differences. Natural selection versus artificial selection. Examples of natural selection. Examples of artificial selection. Natural selection definition. Natural selection is a process through which organisms adapt to a changing environment by undergoing selective changes in their genotype or genetic composition. It is one of the four primary mechanisms of evolution, alongside mutation, genetic drift, and migration. The concept of natural selection was popularized by Charles Darwin during his studies on evolution. According to Darwin, natural selection is not an intentional or purposeful process. It is driven by environmental changes and alterations in the genotype of organisms. Through the mechanism of natural selection, genetic changes that enhance an organism's ability to survive and reproduce are retained and transmitted to the next generation. Genetic changes that are less beneficial tend to be eliminated over successive generations. This gradual process can lead to the formation of new ecological niches and may eventually result in speciation, making natural selection a fundamental driver of evolutionary change. Natural selection may occur due to variations in survival, fertility, mating success, or other life cycle traits. Even minor genetic changes can contribute to natural selection, provided they are heritable and persist over multiple generations. Through this mechanism, nature effectively selects organisms with advantageous traits, granting them a reproductive edge and driving evolutionary transformations. The idea of fitness plays a critical role in understanding natural selection. Fitness is not solely based on longevity, but also includes reproductive success. An organism that lives a shorter lifespan but produces more surviving offspring can be considered more fit and is more likely to be favored by natural selection. Competition is another aspect that supports natural selection, where fitter individuals compete with less fit ones for essential resources, such as food and shelter. As a result of this competition, less fit organisms may perish, allowing the fitter individuals to thrive and pass on their genes. Natural selection is typically a slow and extended process, requiring many generations before its outcomes become evident. It functions within natural populations, contributing to substantial biological diversity that may appear random. This increase in diversity also leads to a rise in heterozygous genotypes within a species. Examples of natural selection include the evolution of long necks in giraffes and the adaptation of bird beak sizes and shapes in accordance with their feeding behaviors. If you have watched till here, don't forget to subscribe to Family of Science Lovers. Press the bell icon button so you are always updated. Artificial selection definition. Artificial selection, also known as selective breeding, is the process in which humans identify and select desirable traits in plants and animals to develop preferred phenotypic characteristics through breeding. Although artificial selection operates using the same mechanism as natural selection, it is a human-controlled process, whereas natural selection occurs due to natural environmental factors. The basis of artificial selection lies in studies by Charles Darwin, who demonstrated how selective breeding can lead to the development of desirable traits over time. Unlike natural selection, artificial selection does not typically lead to evolution or speciation. Artificial selection is generally a quicker process, with observable effects occurring over just a few generations. In domesticated animals and plants, individuals are selected based on their desirable phenotypic traits to produce crossbred varieties with enhanced characteristics. Farmers commonly use artificial selection to increase productivity and improve the quality of crops and livestock. In animals, the process often starts with purebred individuals that possess desirable traits, which are then bred with other purebreds to preserve and enhance those traits. Animal artificial selection can be carried out through inbreeding, line breeding, or outcrossing. Hybrids resulting from selective breeding often show increased vigor, referred to as hybrid vigor, although this process can sometimes lead to quality degradation. A similar approach is used in plant breeding, where wild plant species are domesticated to create uniform and predictable agricultural crops. Plants with favorable traits such as higher yield are selectively bred to retain and improve these characteristics. Selective breeding of plants has been practiced for thousands of years for agricultural benefits and is now also used in research involving transgenic plants that are homozygous for specific genes. While artificial selection is usually intentional and controlled, it can sometimes occur unintentionally during farming practices, leading to both beneficial and harmful outcomes. Advantages of artificial selection include increased productivity, healthier offspring, and faster and easier analysis of traits in the next generation. However, artificial selection also has disadvantages, such as the inability to apply it to an entire population at once and the need for controlled environments like laboratories or greenhouses. The process reduces genetic diversity within a population because only the most fit individuals are bred, increasing the proportion of homozygous genotypes. Examples of artificial selection include the breeding of dogs to create new breeds and the crossbreeding of cash crops like wheat and rice. Key differences: natural selection versus artificial selection. Definition: natural selection, a process of adaptation by organisms to a changing environment involving selective changes to their genotype or genetic makeup. Artificial selection, also called selective breeding, a human-driven process where desirable traits are selected in plants and animals for breeding to enhance phenotypic traits. Process: natural selection, occurs naturally without human intervention. Artificial selection, a human-made and controlled process, occurs in natural selection, happens in natural populations under natural conditions. Artificial selection takes place in domesticated populations assembled by humans. Chances of survival. Natural selection increases the survival chances of fit organisms. Artificial selection may reduce survival chances if the process is not performed correctly. Rate. Natural selection, a slow process with visible effects taking many generations. Artificial selection, a faster process showing results within days or weeks. Controlled by. Natural selection, controlled by environmental and natural factors. Artificial selection, controlled by humans. Performed on. Natural selection may occur in all living organisms. Artificial selection, applied selectively to chosen groups of animals and plants. Traits. Natural selection, based on traits that improve adaptation and survival. Artificial selection, based on traits desirable to humans. Inheritance of traits. Natural selection favors only beneficial or favorable traits over successive generations. Artificial selection selectively passes on chosen traits to future generations. Affects. Natural selection impacts entire populations of species. Artificial selection affects only selected individuals within a species. Diversity. Natural selection results in high biological diversity. Artificial selection may reduce genetic diversity by favoring specific traits. Evolution. Natural selection drives speciation and evolution over time. Artificial selection does not lead to evolution. Scale. Natural selection operates on a broad scale across the natural environment. Artificial selection operates on a narrow scale, focusing on economically valuable individuals. Hybrid vigor. Natural selection leads to hybrid vigor in offspring. Artificial selection often reduces hybrid vigor due to selective breeding for fixed traits. Effort. Natural selection requires no human effort. Artificial selection may involve labor-intensive and costly procedures. Genotype. Natural selection increases the proportion of heterozygous genotypes. Artificial selection increases the proportion of homozygous genotypes. Examples: natural selection, long-necked giraffes, variation in bird beak shapes based on feeding habits. Artificial selection, dog breeding for new breeds, crossbreeding in crops like wheat and rice. Examples of natural selection. First evolution of long-necked giraffes. The emergence of long-necked giraffes from short-necked ancestors is a well-known example of natural selection. In the past, giraffes with varying neck lengths coexisted. However, as food became scarce on the ground, giraffes had to rely on leaves from tall trees for survival. Long-necked giraffes were able to reach these high leaves, giving them a survival advantage, while short-necked giraffes struggled to find food and eventually died out. This environmental pressure led to the selection of long-necked giraffes as the more fit individuals, resulting in the extinction of their short-necked counterparts. Second sexual selection in peacocks. Peacocks demonstrate natural selection through sexual selection. Male peacocks develop long, colorful, and elaborate tail feathers that help them attract female mates. Although these traits do not necessarily improve survival skills, like feeding or escaping predators, they increase the male's chances of reproducing. Males with more vibrant and eye-catching tails are preferred by females and are more likely to pass on their genes. Similar patterns are observed in other bird species, such as ducks and tropical birds, where males display more ornamental traits than females. Examples of artificial selection. First, dog breeding. Dog breeding is a well-known example of artificial selection and is believed to have been practiced for over 14,000 years. In ancient times, dogs were bred selectively to enhance traits such as friendliness, speed, and usefulness, particularly for hunting and protecting humans. As humans began to domesticate dogs for companionship and security, selective breeding shifted focus. Breeds like greyhounds were developed to be strong and agile, serving as effective guard dogs. In modern times, the purpose of dog breeding has evolved further, with emphasis on developing friendlier and more aesthetically pleasing breeds, such as poodles and bulldogs, primarily for companionship. Second, selection of cash crops. Artificial selection in crop cultivation has a long history. The ancestor of modern wheat species is believed to be Triticum monococcum, einkorn wheat, which was first cultivated in Asia around 40,000 years ago. Through crossbreeding and inbreeding with other species, more productive and diverse varieties of wheat were developed. Today, different wheat species are selectively bred for specific uses, such as certain varieties for brewing beer and others for making pasta or noodles. These targeted breeding practices allow farmers to grow crop varieties optimized for particular commercial and nutritional needs. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, press the bell icon button. Thank you!